Good morning, Husker fans. Welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me, as always, is Danny Gillette. And we're back here on this Monday morning for another episode of the podcast. And we're going to look back at the baseball season and kind of do a post-mortem after the Huskers were eliminated from the NCAA tournament this past weekend. There's also a lot of things happening on the recruiting trail as we've now hit the month of June. It's official visit season, so we will look ahead to what to expect on the recruiting trail for the Huskers. And then also we'll look at some of the schedule announcements last week and offer up some thoughts. So before we get into all that, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comment section. And Danny, how are you on this Monday morning?
First Monday of June, a lot going on. That much closer to the regular season for football, and I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Doing pretty well, yeah, hanging in there, getting warmer, but getting ready for summer, I guess. Ready for a little less hectic time on the schedule without any like high school sports and stuff. So yeah, lots. I'm ready for recruiting. I'm ready for official visit season. So we'll see. Hopefully that'll be exciting for Nebraska.
Hopefully, you're doing better than the baseball team. I'll just say that.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean the 17-1 loss, losing to Oklahoma, getting knocked out. Got the win over Holy Cross on Saturday to kind of keep hopes alive. I did have hope going into Sunday. For some reason I thought that they would play better, but when you on the first batter of the game, I mean Will Walsh, had an error on a pretty easy play, and that kind of set the tone. And just yeah, I mean that, and they just could not come up with a hit. When guys were in scoring position against Oklahoma, I think at one point they were like 1 of 15 or something. I know they were like 1 of 7 the other night when they lost 7-4. So I mean, it was frustrating, but overall, I mean, they did win the Big Ten tournament title, and they got to the NCAA tournament. I think that's, to me, that's the baseline for Nebraska baseball. I'm hoping that they can get some guys in the transfer portal, and I think with some of these new rules and the House settlement, I think because baseball hasn't been like a fully scholarship sport, I think this could be a chance for Nebraska to, really be one of the big boys in baseball. And I hope that they're willing to pony up like the ACC and SEC programs have. So we'll see how it works out. But there was a lot of interesting things in this NCAA baseball tournament. Number 1 overall seed Vanderbilt getting knocked out. I believe Texas was maybe the number 2 seed, and they got knocked out as well. So, but again, that makes me, feel like it would have been possible for Nebraska to make a run had they played their best baseball this weekend, and they just weren't able to do it.
Yeah, the bats were cold, and then the defensive kind of lapses, I guess you could say, certainly didn't help matters either. But I mean, 17-1 is certainly not a tall mountain to climb, and they just couldn't get it going on Sunday. And I think overall they had a good season, and they won the Big Ten tournament for the second consecutive year. But definitely felt like they left something out there yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like that kind of for the whole season. I mean, I feel like they left a lot of meat on the bone, and they would probably acknowledge that too. A lot of those, midweek games, and just starting slowly. I know I realize it. They had to adjust to losing, Mason McConaughey, and that was a big blow. And for them to lose, and he was preseason first team All Big Ten. So I mean, he was expected to be one of the best pitchers in the conference, and to not have him, that was a difficult thing to adjust to. They were able to do it. The offense came on. Ty Horn pitched really well, especially at the end of the season. That does give me hope going into the future if they can retain everybody and not lose anybody in the portal. McConaughey, Ty Horn, and Tucker Timmerman are all back next season, so that would probably be your starting rotation. Luke Broderick, second team All Big Ten as a reliever. So pitching wise, I feel like they're pretty strong, but you're losing Gabe Swanson offensively. You still have Dylan Carey, Devin Nunes. You have a lot of weapons there. Case Sanderson, Caden Brumbaugh. But yeah, I feel like if they could add another big time player or two in the portal, I feel like there's a chance for them to be one of the better teams in the Big Ten next season. But they need to be more consistent, and they need to have fewer performances like the one they had on Sunday, because I feel like, I mean, it really snowballed on them, but it just seems like a lot of times in these games, they just start really poorly in a lot of these midweek games too, against, Creighton and Kansas, and some of these games that, had they won, they wouldn't had to have, run the table in the Big Ten tournament. So they do need to be more consistent about Will Bolt. I don't think he needs to be fired or is on the hot
No.
seat or anything. But I do think that this program has underachieved, I would say, especially in the regular season the past 2 years. Now they found a way to get to the NCAA tournament, but they need to find a way to, how they're playing in Omaha and that 4 or 5 day stretch in Omaha. They need to find a way to make that happen over the course of the entire season. So
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like they perform well when perform at their best when their backs are against the wall, and that's good for that period of time, but it's not a good way to live, and it's not a good way to survive. So, I do think they need a little more consistency. And historically, when you look at Will Bolt teams, they have always seemed to have started slow at the beginning of the season. So um, I get maybe that's a Will Bolt thing. Maybe that's just luck of the draw. But starting slow has seemed to have been a theme for the program.
yeah, so they need to get that rectified, and we'll see. We'll see what moves go in the portal. But as long as they can, retain the guys that they have, and maybe pick up a couple of bats. Who knows? They definitely could be one of the contenders in the Big Ten next season. I know what Oregon went out, so it wasn't a great weekend for the Big Ten. I'm not sure how UCLA did, um, but anyway, it was a fun season though. It was fun these past few weeks, but yeah, more consistency and overall, it should be a really fun season on the diamond for Nebraska next year in softball and in baseball. So. Yeah, so let's shift over to some recruiting because it's June. We talked about that. It's official visit season that actually started before June, like May 29th, last weekend. Nebraska didn't really have any guys on campus except for Archie Wilson, the punter, the Australian rugby style punter. Still no announcement of like a signing or a commitment yet, but I'm sure that'll probably be coming, I would think, sometime this week or sometime shortly after that. I don't know if there's, you know, T's or I's that need to be dotted and T's that need to be crossed, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. But what are your thoughts going into official visit season, which kind of got started with the camp on Sunday?
They need to make the most of their 2027 visitors, 2027 and 2028. They brought in a couple of offensive linemen in the 2028 class, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because it it makes me feel old. But they have a bunch of lineman targets that they're bringing in, and they also have some targets in the 2026 class that they're going after next weekend. So it's a busy month overall, and May was a little bit quiet, and now things are starting to pick up.
Yeah, so when you look at it, they've got over around 30 official visits set up here in the 2026 class coming up. And yeah, there'll be a lot of guys from 2027 here with the 7-on-7 tournament. Trey Taylor's going to be on campus all week, for the camp and for the 7-on-7 as well, the huddle event. So we'll see how that all plays out. I think I'm excited about it. I'm not sure how much of an impact it's going to have on Nebraska recruiting. That remains to be seen. But this is a big weekend for 2026 recruits. CJ Brona is taking his official visit. That's going to be a big one. He's with all the other schools sniffing around him. Calvin Obat, the big offensive tackle, he's ranked in the top 100. Brian Bonner, I think this is a really big recruitment for Nebraska. I mean, they've got Jamarian Parker last year, who was a really good running back, but they've not really had I would say they haven't really won a highly contested recruitment for a running back like a Brian Bonner. And so he's 106 overall via On3. That would be a really big pickup, I think, for them. Cameron Wilson, the Syracuse commitment, is going to be visiting this weekend. So Ryan Moret, another guy I really like, offensive lineman, but he's from Miami. Miami's in the mix there. Hayden Ainsworth, Rex Waterman. So I don't know. Out of all those guys, do you feel like there's a chance for Nebraska to maybe get a commitment this week? I know Brona's already committed, but of
Yeah.
those other guys, do you think Nebraska's in a good spot?
Cam Wilson, I've always thought they're in a good spot because of the Philip Simpson connection and the other Florida ties as well. Wilson's always talked about, Nebraska, having that Flo-Braska feel. So I think that plays into it for sure. As far as the others are concerned, maybe Hayden Ainsworth, but it's hard to predict, because a lot of these guys are getting offers from other teams, obviously, and a lot of these are highly contested recruitments. I guess I'll add Rex Waterman to that mix too, because he's not a bad player by any means, but he's a low enough prospect to where Nebraska can really make a push without him being seen by some of the other bigger programs as well.
Yeah, and his recruitment has gotten pretty interesting. 6'5", 295, Rex Waterman. He's ranked, in the 1200s right now, but whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. So his official visits: UCLA, Boise State, Nebraska, and Duke. I mean, I definitely think that's a winnable recruitment. He's an Arizona guy, so I mean, I would say that UCLA probably is the biggest threat there, but I feel like if Nebraska, he's one that I feel like if Nebraska pushed and really, made him a priority, I feel like they could get a commitment this weekend, or shortly after that.
I feel the same way about Wilson too.
Yeah, and that would be interesting to get him flipped over, and then Brian Bonner, just mentioning him, but excuse me, looking at his official visits: Penn State, UCLA, Washington. So I feel like that's another winnable recruitment. This official visit will be his third trip to Nebraska. Like I said, I would love to see them add a running back like that. And I like Hayden Ainsworth, but Kelvin Obat's really the guy that I have circled outside of CJ Brona. They need to land a big time tackle in this class. They've whiffed on quite a few in the past few years outside of Grant Bricks. So he's a kid from Idaho. I would really like to see them land him. Oregon is in the mix there. Michigan's in the mix there as well. And then CJ Brona. I don't necessarily love that his visit is first on the official visit schedule for him, but it is what it is. The way he's talked though, like, he's not talking like somebody that's really committed. He's like, I'm going to take my official visits and then make a decision. So, I mean, Nebraska essentially has to treat this like he's not even a commitment. He visited Florida this weekend. Then it's Nebraska. So I guess he wasn't. I guess Nebraska got the second visit. I would have preferred the last one, which Penn State's getting. It doesn't mean everything, but it can sometimes make an impact. So Nebraska this weekend, Florida State, and Penn State. So what do you think about the chances of CJ Brona flipping his commitment?
Very good. I mean, the fact that we got him as early as we did, and then I remember, and I know we talked about this before, but I mean, it's really worth repeating. Me and you were looking at his highlights and his measurables, and we're like, how the hell did he get ranked so low? How is he not even a guy that's, at least like a high 3-star player? And now other teams, unfortunately, are recognizing that as well. So we're going to be in for a battle for him, and I would not be surprised at all if Nebraska loses him in this class.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. I think he's, of all the official visitors, of all 30 official visitors, I would say he's the most important because they need to get him. They need to land him. There's just, when you talk about elite, elite players or whatever, there's not a lot of prospects for Nebraska, I would say, in this class. I mean, Kelvin Obat, Brian Bonner are pretty close, but there's not. Nebraska's really not in a great spot. I don't feel like with a lot of other like top 100 guys, and CJ Brown is one. I mean, Claude Mpua is another one. It's not that they're not in great spots with some of those guys, but like a top 100 guy, CJ Brown is probably it. I mean, and so just especially at that position, man, if you could get some elite receivers and elite cornerbacks, I really feel that could take this defense to the next level, kind of in the future. And so I don't know. Hopefully they can find a way to impress him this weekend and put themselves back in the driver's seat there.
I mean, I've said that 2026 is probably going to be a transfer portal heavy class anyway. When you look at just the overall outlook of the class, and there's 4 commitments, and and we haven't had a commitment since May. I think this is going to be a transfer portal heavy class, and then 2027 and 2028, I think you're going to see more high school kids, especially if this upcoming season goes well.
There are a couple of guys that did announce commitment dates. Darian Jones, now that you mentioned, there's one for July 4th, and then Luke Sorensen also announced one. I'm trying to double check what his date was, and Nebraska is in his top 3. So June 20th. So he's going to be committing on June 20th.
So 3 Fridays from now, since it's the second.
Yeah, and so his official visit schedule is my Penn State, which he visited last weekend, Texas A&M, Miami, and Texas. So I mean, Nebraska's really they're listed as a finalist, but they're not even getting a visit. And I don't know.
I
To
don't
me,
love
when
that. I mean,
yeah, and then
when you look at like Miami, tight end U, like I don't love that at all.
well, and Penn State already had the crystal ball, a crystal ball prediction. And so, I mean, when you go to a school for a visit and then like the next day you're announcing a commitment, that's usually a pretty good sign for that school. So, I mean, unless things change, I would think Luke Sorensen's going to Penn State, and he's not visiting Nebraska, at least according to the schedule. Not that he couldn't come, but unless he actually comes to Nebraska for an official visit, I wouldn't expect him to commit. Um, so I really wouldn't worry about Luke Sorensen. But what about Darian Jones? That's a pretty interesting recruitment. One of the few in-state offers that Nebraska's made. So how do you feel about him? Iowa State. I think Minnesota is one of the other teams in the mix. Kansas State. Who's the biggest threat to Nebraska for Darian Jones?
Honestly, I feel like it's Iowa State, and that's just because of the work that they've done in this particular class. They've really honed in on the state of Nebraska. I know Darian Jones' brother Donovan is here, but I mean, that doesn't really. I mean, maybe the family ties will help, but that's not a guarantee. So I'd say Iowa State, honestly, is the biggest threat. And of course, Iowa. It can't be discounted. I know they have their visit right after Nebraska, so you know I would love to land Darian Jones, but I think that's going to be a tough recruitment too. Nebraska's in a lot of battles right now, and they don't necessarily have the upper hand, in my opinion.
Yeah, so with Darian Jones to set the table, he visited Minnesota this past weekend. Then it will be Kansas State, Iowa State, which I think has like 5 commitments in Nebraska in the 2026 class,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. They've got quite a few, including Jeff Tamala, who's been visiting Alabama recently. And then Nebraska's June 13th, and then Iowa comes up last. So Darian Jones does, according to the On3 prediction machine, there's a 91% chance he'll commit to Nebraska. I believe he has a crystal ball too. Sean Callahan's got his prediction in for Darian Jones. So I mean, if I had to put a prediction in, I would go for Nebraska right now. I just think I think they have work to do, though. I think that his brother being on the team helps. I think that they kind of got in a little bit late, but not too late. Not so I don't know. I feel like Iowa and Iowa State are probably the two teams I'm worried about. But if Nebraska gets his work gets its work done on that official visit, I think they should be able to lock down this commitment. And he's basically, I mean, you're going to see a lot of this, and that's why you see a lot of commitments around July 4th. But he's going to take his 5 official visits, make his decision, and go from there. So I think that's a strong way to do it and go through that decision making process. So hopefully, they'll be able to lock him down.
Yeah, no, that would be a big commitment for Nebraska, and they were also busy this weekend offering some kids following their camp. One of the guys that intrigues me is Xavier Balla. He's from New York. He is not ranked in Rivals rankings right now, and he has offers from BC, Bowling Green, Buffalo, Connecticut, UMass, Rutgers. So a lot of New York schools. Syracuse is involved there as well. He had 1,109 yards and 8 touchdowns last season. So, there's a lot of room to grow with him. There's a lot of talent there, and that's a 2027 recruitment that I think is definitely worth watching.
Yeah, for sure. And on that same note, another guy who hasn't been offered, but he basically took a visit yesterday as part of the camp and worked out. Nelson Wheeler,
Yep.
I'm hoping, and he's 5'9", 200-pound running back. He's playing for Millard South now. He was at Grand Island before that. So another in-state kid, doesn't have an offer from Nebraska, but he does have quite a few Big Ten offers, actually. Kansas or Illinois, Kansas, he offered him, obviously not in the Big Ten, but he visited there yesterday. But Michigan State, Maryland, Wisconsin, Northwestern, Cincinnati, Oregon State, Washington State, Fresno State, a lot of Mountain West schools.
Yep.
Yeah, Kansas State, Iowa State again, Minnesota, or some of the other teams also kind of sniffing around. He's a low-ranked 3-star, but it would not surprise me if he got an offer and if he ended up in this class, honestly, because he runs really well. He didn't run this past year in track because of the transfer thing. And I think last year he, as a junior, I believe, or no, he'd be a junior this year. I think he was hurt or so, I can't remember, but he's run like sub 11 seconds before. Like he's a strong track athlete, and he's up over like 205 pounds now. So when you're looking at the running back board, I mean, there's Bonner, there's Jamal Rule. There's a Deceiving Walker, and then it wouldn't shock, to me, I just don't see Nebraska landing two out of those guys. I could see maybe one of those three, and then you pair one of those three with Nelson Wheeler, and to me, that's a pretty good running back class.
And another, kind of name to watch. They hosted 2028 quarterback Hunter Fujikawa on Sunday, and he is not ranked in any of the 24/7 Sports composite rankings. He does have offers from California, Hawaii, San Jose State, UNLV, and Utah. He is a Hawaiian kid, so there's something to kind of think about there. He measures in at 6 feet 2 inches, 200 pounds. So they are looking at quarterbacks for the future, which I thought was interesting given how loaded the room is. And so it's interesting that they're already kind of looking at quarterbacks.
Yeah, Titus Heward is another one. Brock Heward's kid also there. So quarterback's the one position you can't recruit that too
Right.
early. So it wouldn't surprise. I honestly, they'll probably send out a 2028 offer before the summer is over at quarterback,
I would
and
agree.
then
Yep.
set your board from there, and go from there. It'll be interesting to see what kind of impact I think Trey Taylor has this week, and the 7-on-7 stuff will be interesting. I think it's good to get more prospects here. Again, I'm not sure what the impact of it is going to be, but I think it will open some eyes for these kids. Like, hey, Nebraska, especially Lincoln, is a pretty cool place, especially if you want to, play big time college football. And that's everything that Matt Rule needs to, achieve, I guess, for Nebraska at least from a recruiting sense is these kids need to view Nebraska as a big time program again. And I think this will be a small step in that direction. Winning is the big thing. You have to win, and then you have to get guys drafted. I mean, like until Nebraska really starts doing that, nothing else is going to, just lead to magical recruiting success. But I think with the limitations they've had in terms of wins on the field, I think that Matt Rule's done a hell of a job on the trail, and I think that this 7-on-7 thing is only going to help.
Limitations of the wins is a nice way to put it.
They've
choked the last 20 years.
Yeah,
No, I
I
get
just
it.
mean when you're recruiting to a 5-win season and a 7-win season as compared to Georgia, Texas, some of these, that can be difficult to overcome. And the other thing too that might even be worse than the playoff rating is the draft record, because I mean you've had Cam Jurgens, but there's just not been a lot of guys drafted. This past year helped a little bit, and I think just but getting guys, like if they could get Sayre Wright into the first or second round this year, I mean that would be a big step forward. And that, like, sure, that's maybe a little pie in the sky, but I don't think it's that crazy. I don't think him being a day 2 pick isn't, and like he played really good last year for showing up in July. He showed up in July.
Yep. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people miss. He showed up in July and he immediately slid in like he had been in the program for like 2 years. So that was really good development too on the coaching staff part.
Yeah, and who should get credit for that? A lot of credit for that is John Butler. I mean, he got here late too, and he did a great job with the secondary. But Sayre Wright, and that's what gives me a lot of hope about. I feel like there's a lot of talent in the secondary, and having an NFL guy back there, I just think that's going to do worlds of good for Nebraska. So anyway, I'm not sure where we got off on that with the recruiting front, but the winning, that's what we were talking about.
The winning. And I mean, even when I look here locally, BC had the same record as Nebraska, and they had 3 players drafted, including one in the second round, and Donovan, the pass rusher. I'm gonna mispronounce his last name.
Yeah, I can't pronounce his name.
Yeah, and then they had Ozzie Trapillo in the second round and Drew Kendall in the fifth. So it can happen, and I do think obviously BC had Zay Flowers in 2023. So I mean it can happen, and even if you're not the best program, that player development is important, and I think we're getting there. But I think honestly 2025 and 2026 will be the year where we start to see development and a lot of players starting to go to the draft.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely think there'll be more. I was too optimistic last year. I'll admit that about the draft prospects, but this year, I think there'll be more guys. And it is crazy to me because like Nash Hutmaker, I think if he would have left after his junior season, I think he
Yeah.
would have been drafted. So we'll see. I still feel like there's a chance he finds his way onto a 53-man roster.
Had he not wrestled, I think it would have been a different conversation.
I think so.
Honestly,
Yeah, I don't think the wrestling was the best thing for him. Honestly, I know he really enjoyed it, and it was a great story. But yeah, I don't know if that was the best thing for him to
because
do.
that took away a lot of his weight, obviously for wrestling purposes, but that didn't
Yeah,
help him on the football field, and it kind of showed last season. Unfortunately, at times he was still a good player,
yeah,
but
but he wasn't the 2023 putt
no,
maker, and so yeah, we'll see. I still but he's with the Bucks I believe so.
we,
Him, him and I think it's him. Well, he bounced around with a couple teams.
the Ravens, I
Um,
remember, right?
Yeah, and then I think they invited him to camp, but they didn't sign him, so he went to the Tampa Bay camp, and then I think him and John Bullock signed as like camp free. So I think
Yeah,
both of them are on the 90-man roster for the Bucks, along with our guy Trey Palmer. So hopefully they can make it. Hopefully
and
they can make that roster.
Levante David.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the goat, man. I love Levante David, even though I don't like the Bucks. Like I'm always checking out their high because you always see like something good happen with Levante David. I don't know how many times, like as a Packers fan, I've watched Levante David just like tear things up. Like that dude is an absolute baller. So anyway, let's last segment of the show. Let's switch over to the kickoff times, like them or hate them. I know I've seen a lot of kind of heartache or whatever you want to call it, heartburn, I guess would be a better term over the schedule. And I guess
Also,
the
shout out
one,
to Ben Steele, who's also on Tampa Bay Bucks. I forgot.
yeah,
I knew there was
big
one we
Tampa
were
fan.
forgetting, and Ben's on there. So sorry, Ben. But
Um, but yeah, so I guess the most interesting ones, they've got Iowa back at 11 Central, which is interesting because we had to play them on the road last year at night. Um, the other one is the Michigan game at 1:30. I know a lot of people wanted that to be a night game. That would have been a
yeah,
great
that was so
atmosphere.
cool. Yeah.
They're playing Friday night at Minnesota, which is really annoying.
Why do we always get stuck? So sorry.
I
Why do we
don't,
always get stuck with these Friday
I don't
games?
know. And really weird, like playing it 6 days after they have to play at Maryland. So that's their second consecutive road game. Yeah, I don't know why. Michigan refuses to play these games. Like, I don't think you'll ever see Michigan, Ohio State, or like Penn State playing these Friday night games. So I don't know why Nebraska keeps doing it. I hate
Probably
them.
because all the other good teams are refusing, so they need somebody to
Well,
fill the Big Ten slot. I don't know.
yeah, Trev Alberts, and I mean, so whatever. But I hate the Friday night games. But what do you think? What are your thoughts on the schedule? Any heartburn on your side?
Well, we still don't know a time for the Michigan State game, right? Because when I looked, it was like three. There was three time possibilities, so I'm curious to see when that game falls.
I think it
Um,
was. They just basically said it wasn't going to be a night game, so it'll be in the morning, afternoon, or yeah. So I think that's what I saw there.
Yeah, no, the Minnesota, like it's just tough. You got 6 games, and for the record, I hate Thursday night football in the NFL too. I don't like that either. But that travel time and the turnaround for the Minnesota game is going to be incredibly difficult, and depending on how things shake out, that could be a crucial game at a crucial point in the season. So and on top of that, Minnesota is never an easy opponent, so you have that as well, and yeah, I don't really like the Friday night games at all. We always get stuck with them. It's either Illinois or we play Minnesota, like all these weird days. Minnesota on a Thursday, you got Illinois week 0, you got Illinois on Friday, you got all these things, and I don't know. We always get stuck with these games. It's annoying. Rutgers, let's see, 5 years ago now, almost on a Friday. Granted, that was for COVID, but still, it just seems like we get all these matchups that are just so wacky.
Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah, a lot of them are weird, and yeah, it would have been fun to see the Michigan game at night, but it will be in the CBS window. So I mean, I don't know. That'll be cool. But to me, I go back to that game. I just feel like that game is going to really define the season for Nebraska. So I don't know. That's my thought on it. I feel like if they win that game, I feel like this could be a 10-win season. If they lose that game, I feel like it's going to be a 7 or 8 win season. So I feel like that's really a turning point. And I mean, honestly, like there isn't outside of the Penn State game and that game, like there's not a game on the schedule they shouldn't win. But playing Minnesota on a Friday night on the second week of a back-to-back is going to be difficult. That's why, like you look at the opponents and it really is about, when you play somebody, where you're playing somebody, and at what point in the season, and the rest of it too. Because, if you're playing, if that was like your first conference game on the Saturday on the road against Minnesota, I'd feel much better about Nebraska's chances of winning than after a road game at Maryland, which is also going to be difficult, on short rest playing on a Friday night. So I don't know. Nebraska always has challenges in the schedule. The Big Ten just it loves to put those roadblocks in there.
And if I'm a fan, there are some good home games. Like Michigan's a good home game, and USC is a good home game. But this really isn't, a good home schedule. You have Houston Christian, you have Akron. I mean, you have Michigan, who's not the same Michigan that they once were, and you have Michigan State. But it's like this isn't really the best home schedule from a fan's perspective either. And I think it goes back to the conversation we had about not scheduling these cupcake games, because 2 of those home games are Akron and Houston Christian. So in a way, it's kind of cheating out the fans too, I guess.
Yeah, and that was kind of my point the other, we need to get rid of
Yeah.
those kind of games. And it just seems like they're going to keep scheduling more. And I understand why. But I don't know. It's kind of crazy though, because, like you have Greg Sankey or whatever, talking about like the strength of schedule and yada, yada, yada. And it's like the strength of schedule, it's like you are getting the benefit from that. You dolt. I do not understand how these people are so frankly dumb, because that's the only reason Alabama was even in the conversation last
And
year.
they
Is because
shouldn't
the
have been in
strength
the
of
conversation
schedule.
to begin with, honestly.
Yeah, they got beat by a 6-5. I mean, Michigan and 7-5. They beat Alabama. Illinois beat South Carolina. Like all these teams were overrated. So like to me, it's kind of driving me crazy a little bit. And him saying like wins matter more than or like your record matters, more than who you've played. And it's like,
They got
no,
rolled by
that's
Oklahoma on top of that.
yeah. It's like, no, that's not true, because most teams that lost to 6-6 Oklahoma and Vanderbilt wouldn't have been in the conversation,
Yep.
but you were solely because of strength of
Yep.
schedule. So to me, the SEC, that whole SEC conversation is driving me crazy.
Yeah, it
But
is.
anyways, we'll wrap it up there, you guys. We'll be back for another episode this week. We'll definitely be trying to get more consistent with our schedule as the season approaches. So keep an eye out for that. We'll try to get our Saturday chats going again. But please make sure that you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.